So, that's just small details. So, as I was saying, the name's David Poe. I am from Utah. I do business all over the world. I've had offices in Dubai. I've had offices in Florida, but I reside in Utah, and I do business here in the Philippines. And so, as I kind of characterize it, on my right hand, I'm a businessman. On my left hand, I'm the G20 and very interested in human rights and the conditions of the planet, making sure that we're doing our part of what we can to do so. So one of the issues that I'm going to discuss, but I don't want to do it now, I'll do it at the very end probably, is that one of the purposes of my being here is as a businessman, my company, a company that I'm involved with in the United States, has a solution for one of the dire solutions that affects the Philippines, which is plastic pollution into the ocean.
Yes.
And I have a machine that will actually take all that hydrocarbon waste and convert it into energy and oil. And so
bring
you're
him
in
to
there.
Bar.
So let's see, you're in there.
We should bring him to Bar.
Yeah.
Especially
So that's just that's kind of more on the, I'll say, on my business side of it. But it also is very part and parcel of our discussion today.
That's right.
So it'll be brought into not as a commercial venture that we'll be talking about, but just the theory of what it's doing to the country and to the world. So I thought it'd be good to start out with the idea of, what is your involvement, and just go around the room and talk about your involvement with the process of climate in one form or another, either environment or whatever. And when I say your involvement, you or your organization that you represent.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that would be good. They're both on the system, so on the sheet here. So good. Thank you very much for doing this. So can I just start with you?
Yes.
And then we'll just go around this way, okay? So you're the last one.
Great.
Saving the best of the last, right?
So I'm Salma Rasul. I'm with the Philippine Center for Islam and Democracy, but I also represent the University of the Philippines Law Center. The reason why I chose climate change and humanitarian assistance, because it's intertwined, right? The Philippines has always been beset by disasters, both natural and man-made. But for natural disasters, year in, year out, we've always had flooding because of the regular typhoons, and then earthquakes, landslides. So the reason why I chose climate change is our organization in 2010, 2012, there was, in 2009, there was a group of 200 Muslim representatives from all over the world. They came together and formed MACCA, that's a Muslim Association for Climate Change Action. They came up with a 7-year development plan. This was, the forum was done in Istanbul. So there was a 10-year plan encouraging Muslim states and countries which have substantial Muslim populations to look at climate change and how it impacts their communities. For the Philippines, most of the coastal communities and the island provinces, most are, the residents are mostly Muslims and indigenous peoples. For the Bangsamoro Autonomous Region, 3 of the provinces are island provinces. So
That's BARM, right?
Yeah. So you talk about Basilan, Sulu, and Tawi-Tawi.
Okay.
Maguindanao and Lanao, although not directly coastal, but they do have bodies of water. But all, as last month, right, the typhoon caused heavy flooding in parts of Maguindanao, and the most impacted were, aside from the IPs, Muslim communities who were residing in the coastal areas. So, for us Muslims, it's an issue that I think not only government but private sector and CSO should get together and focus, because not much has been looking at least for BARM, not much has been with respect to natural disasters. Mostly focus initiatives, policies are on the man-made. So you're looking at extremism and terrorism. But with respect to climate change, there has been, I don't know whether it's standoffish or because there's lack of capacity in BARM to look at the science as well as how to engage the community in these issues. That's why I thought this would be a good way to interact with people who would have probably knowledge about best practices, so we could adopt it in our areas.
Good. Good.
Okay. Assalamualaikum. Good morning, everyone. I am Dr. Cristina Dato Ramos. I work for the National Commission on Muslim Filipinos as a medical officer. But I chose this group in particular because as part of my job, I decided to take up masters in the Asian Institute of Management, particularly the program for disaster risk and crisis management. In my 5-year experience in government, particularly in our agency, I felt or I feel that the experience, the knowledge, and the interest of government employees are almost zero when it comes to climate change and proper disaster and risk management. So, to put into context what the government usually does in terms of disaster management, it's disaster, give relief, aid.
That's it.
Basically, that's it. And I think Filipinos have been trained, and especially the vulnerable sectors which we serve, the Muslim Filipinos, they have been conditioned to think that when a disaster happens, you can just wait for the government to provide relief, which is not sustainable, and it is not something that, particularly our agency, which is a small agency, it's not something that we can do without the help of other agencies. And even with the help of other agencies, we can't really sustain it. So it was my decision, as well as Dr. June's decision, that I enroll in that program so that we can learn about what we as an agency can do to better strengthen the communities in terms of teaching them about climate change, about what type of humanitarian aid is needed, especially in Mindanao. And even the urban communities, such as here in NCR, they are also in need of humanitarian aid. It's just that sometimes there is an issue with how it should be delivered and what kind of aid should be delivered and by whom. So I guess that's my role now. I have limited knowledge. I'm still studying, so I hope that we can discuss things that would be helpful for our agency in the future as well.
Great.
Thank you. I'm Dr. June Dato Ramos from the National Commission on Muslim Filipinos.
If you don't mind, use all the voice you can.
Yes, I am the regional director for the NCR office. Actually, climate change and humanitarian aid are major concerns that have been brought up by our commissions, Commission on Audit. So dapat we should develop this, and there's very little experience in NCMF and BARM. We all know that.
That's true.
And since we are in charge of the well-being of the Muslim Filipinos nationwide, there's a very little experience in NCMF and BARM when it comes to dealing with climate change. So I think training and educations will benefit us, the leaders, the government employees, and eventually the Muslim communities. And in fact, what I just believe that there should be more focus on the aspect of disaster risk management, including better understanding of the climate change and the global warming and disasters caused by these issues.
Great. Okay. You're up.
So I'm Clifford Ko. I'm a partnerships assistant for G20 Foundation
Again.
Philippines. So I'm Clifford Ko. I'm a partnerships assistant under G20 Foundation Philippines. So we joined this breakout session because we're actually very knowledgeable when it comes to climate change action. This is one of our missions under environmental protection in City. Is one of our missions. So we came here. We're actually surprised that the starting panel. We wish that it was part of the program for climate change, because it was more on the sexual exploitation of children. So we were given a chance that maybe we could also be part of the program and speak about climate change.
Well, I'm going to say right now, you're already part of the program, because this is the key. This is where the rubber hits the road.
Yeah, but we're really thankful that we're given this platform where we could discuss with other like-minded people with regards to climate change, especially in the Philippines, where we're already feeling it. We're already feeling the heat. We're already feeling the droughts and the floods. It's getting more and more intense every year or so. So we're here to discuss it. Dr. Peggy.
Yeah, I'm Peggy, Peggy C, and I'm also with Suchi. We sometimes say it's Suchi. It's the Chinese, how you really say it in Chinese, where Philippines is one of the country offices of our main office in Taiwan.
Oh, okay.
Our main office is in Taiwan, and we're one of the 68. Sorry, and then Suchi.
Excuse me for a second. Just I don't know if you're getting to this, but what does Suchi mean?
Yeah.
Oh, or
Suchi,
maybe you're getting there.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, Suchi. Those are transliteration of the two Chinese words. Chu means compassion. Ji is relief.
Oh,
So
I see.
Ji is compassion relief.
Oh,
So
okay.
our history is from 58 years. It started in 1966, and we have 4 missions and 8 footprints, and one of the major missions of the foundation is environmental protection. We've started it. Our founder is a Dharma master, Zheng Yan. She is a Buddhist nun. We're a Buddhist organization, and she
Okay.
started the foundation. And she started environmental protection way back in 1990, when no one was talking about
it.
climate change. No one was talking about 1.5 degrees. No agreements, no Paris agreements. She started with saying, why don't we start recycling? And currently we have 100,000 unpaid, retired, most of them retired, volunteers in Taiwan, only doing everyday environmental protection.
Really?
So they actually go out. So Taiwan is now one of the maybe cleanest countries with the best recycling, reuse, all the 5 R's, best environment protection program countries in the world. And it was because through the foundation. So we have volunteers picking up recyclables, paper. When we use paper, our volunteers, let me borrow this. Our
Sure.
volunteers in Taiwan will actually cut this,
Wow.
segregate the white unprinted paper
With the printed.
with the printed ones.
Really?
And so from 1990, and then we started promoting plant-based diet. I think when we talk about climate change and about the climate crisis, we cannot deviate from our choices every day on what we put on our plates.
That's right.
So our foundation also very actively promotes plant-based diet, vegetarian diet. And in fact, in our for disaster responses, in all of our disaster responses around the world, or here in the Philippines, we've only used plant-based food. When we cook hot meals during Typhoon Yolanda in Tacloban, or Typhoon
plant-based.
Haiyan,
Okay.
we served 10,000 hot meals every day,
Wow.
and that was all plant-based. We gave
So halal.
we invested on bowls, that we gave the bowls to them, and we did not use paper-based products or disposables. So we invest on these things. our main office in Taiwan, in fact, invests also on trying to recycle plastic bottles, because we've been our volunteers there have been collecting plastic bottles. So what to do, with this plastic bottles? So right now, like what I'm wearing, it's all made up of recycled PET bottles. My shirt, my pants,
Really?
my shoes are all
Recycled.
from PET bottles. But that is also, there's still a challenge here in the Philippines, because Tzu Chi Philippines is still very, very small compared to our main office in Taiwan. So there's still a lot of things that we can do. But here in the Philippines, I think Serge, he said, oh, you were in Tacloban. I think that was our biggest humanitarian aid. I think we spent more than 3 billion pesos. Yeah, 3 billion pesos to put in Tacloban, so to make Tacloban rise up again. So we introduced cash for cleanup program. So at that time, Tacloban's minimum wage was around 250 pesos.
Yeah,
But with our meeting with our founder, Dharma Master Chungin, she said, why don't we give 500 pesos? And we told our founder, we said, we do not have the money, we do not have the funds here in the Philippines. So 46 Tzu Chi offices around the world contributed. For the large part also, of course, our main office in Taiwan. 46 countries contributed to the funds. And at the start, we said, we will pay you 500 pesos if you clean up your homes, bring out the trash, bring out the debris, bring it to the streets. No one believed, right? Who would pay 500 pesos? And we don't know you. And they said, are you Korean? Are you Japanese? And then when I said, magandang umaga po, they were like taken aback. Oh, you're Filipino? And I said, yes, we are Filipinos. Of course, we had volunteers from 13 other countries. So when we started doing the cash for work, it started with 600, increased to 2,000, because they brought home the 500, went home and told their neighbors and their families, I got 500 pesos for cleaning my own home. And at the peak, we had 30,000 people cleaning the whole of Tacloban. And that's when we were able to, I think, help in bringing Tacloban back. And with the 500, because everything was lost for a lot of the families, with the 500 pesos, people are able to start buying things. And then a lot of people were able to start selling things. So then we saw the wet market going alive. Because at that time, a lot of people were actually moving out of Tacloban. So when we were saying we see people going out of Tacloban, our volunteers were going in. But apart from that, we had to bring in heavy equipment also. Because if you do clean up, there's no heavy equipment, there were no drivers, so we had to bring in heavy equipment from Cebu, from Leyte. And then we also had to bring generator sets so that we can, make all of these work possible. And I think lastly was we also gave cash assistance to families. We gave to around 60,000 families cash assistance. So they used this as seed money. A lot of them, actually one couple became a millionaire with the seed money of 15,000 pesos.
Yeah.
Because what did they do? They started selling cocoa lumber. So many coconut trees fell, right? So they took the coconut lumber, started selling it to all the people who had to rebuild their homes. And then they became millionaires in a year. So that was just, I think, one of our biggest efforts. But Tzu Chi has been in areas of like medical beneficiary assistance and education also. But we also have responded to a lot of disasters in the country. But since last year, we were saying we had to put some budget into mitigating the disasters and not just responding to it, because we'll never have enough to respond to disasters. And that's why we're saying we're now trying to really promote plant-based diet. We're helping schools and universities and hospitals, but they're not that open also. We're saying, can you reduce your meat usage by at least 20%, and we'll help you, we'll train you, we'll do the capacity building, we'll help you with the sourcing of the vegetable proteins. But we need the acceptance of institutions to start reducing the meat so that we can actually curb and then help in the climate crisis. Yeah, sorry,
Right,
it took
right.
me a long
Yeah, no,
long
so
introduction.
that's a very good overview. So go ahead.
Yeah, I'm Pastor Hector Aranya from AMG Philippines. We are a Christian development organization. We started working in Eastern Samar because of the Typhoon Yolanda. So that's why we try to build some temporary houses. From that on, we come up with a community development organizations where we try to help them how they would be able to restore their livelihood. As you know, Eastern Samar is basically known for copras, for coconut trees. But when we were trying, because most of the coconut trees have fallen, we tried to come up with, to ask them what are the other sources of income where they could get. So they told us that a long time ago, Eastern Samar was known for abaca. And we know, we asked them why was abaca eradicated in Eastern Samar. So they told us because of the virus, the banjitam. So that's why aside from that, we tried to restore abaca. And in Eastern Samar, in our area, we are located in Samar Island National Park. It is one of the largest contiguous area where old trees grow. I think the United Nations is trying to put this as a part of the heritage
site.
Oh, okay.
area. So that's why how is it related to abaca? Abaca is like a banana where we get fiber before used for ropes. But now I think abaca in the West, they are trying to use it as a way to change plastics because they are now being converted into a paper. So instead of cutting a lot of trees,
You use that.
they will be using abaca. So that's why also abaca it's planted on rolling areas where so that's part now of what we are teaching with the people, because if they plant abaca needs shade trees. They need shades. So that's why aside
trees.
from giving them an opportunity for livelihood, we're also trying to educate them so that they would plant trees, so that this would be part also of preserving the forest and helping the climate change. So that's what we are now doing. We have started the program. We are working with the people in the forest. It's our problem now is there's a lack of planting materials for abaca. But we are trying to come up with how we could really revive abaca industry in Eastern Samar.
Okay, interesting.
At the same time, trying to for them to be involved in climate change. So two-way, providing them income at the same time, helping also the environment.
That's good then. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is John Dean. I'm the National Coordinator of the Laudato Si Movement Pilipinas, which is the local chapter of the Laudato Si Movement International. The organization started in 2015 when Pope Francis released the latest encyclical on environment, listening to the call of science. Basically, in our experience in the Philippines, I come from the Catholic Church. There's a minority voice of Catholics who were involved and very much so given their lives in defense of the environment. So the Laudato Si was a big inspiration for all of us. And although the letter was addressed to not just Catholics but to all people around the world, so what we're trying here in the Philippines, particularly in Manila, is we're trying to connect with different Christian organizations ecumenical groups, and we work with, for example, we work with Greenpeace, we work with secular groups, and we also work with the other Christian groups, and also with Interfaith, we did the Uni Harmony. We're involved, for example, we were able to influence the Catholic Bishops' Conference to issue 2 statements. Although the first statement on ecology was released in the Philippines in 1988, that was even before Laudato Si. Right after Laudato Si, 2 more statements from the Bishops' Conference, basically calling for divestment of funds, meaning funds from religious congregations, and the Catholic Church should be pulled out from investment in dirty energy. And also we bring into our liturgies the different advocacies in the Philippines on the reclamation against the Kaliwa Dam, mining areas in Mindanao, in the Tampakan mines. So basically what we're trying to network are the different organizations, not just of Catholics, but also ecumenical and interfaith. So that's mostly our work here in the Philippines, at least in the Philippines. But we do have connections with the international too.
Did I miss it? What does Laudato mean?
Yeah, that's the title of the song that was of Saint Francis in the 12th century. It's basically praise be to you.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and he was saying that he was in that song. He particularly called brother, sun, sister, moon. Everything in the natural world is a kinship to the human, and we're just part of the natural world. So that's what the Laudato Si came from. It's from an Italian.
I'm glad I asked that question.
Sorry.
So, are you going to sing the song? So thank you for making all these introductions. I think this is really interesting, I think, to everybody about what's being done. And I think that with this effort that's being done, you have to say what, from I guess I'll just say from a religious point of view, how do we infuse that ethical, moral fiber into all the actions associated with climate efforts? I think just based on what everybody has said, that's the foundation for what you're doing. So I think it's like that expression about talking about singing, preaching to the choir. You're already believers and you're already capable of doing it. But what influence then can you have towards the rest of the world? And I'll leave that kind of open as an open discussion. Does anybody like to start talking about what efforts can be done on your part or on your organization's part to infuse this idea of what I'll just call a moral framework for efforts by other people as well, to kind of like the example of getting people involved by I'll say
500 pesos.
500 pesos. That's one way of doing it. That's for sure. And then the question is are there other ways, or what other thoughts have your groups thought about in terms of creating a movement, if I can say it that way? I mean, we have the SDGs of the United Nations, so we're already kind of have that emphasis that way, and so but bringing it down to our level, what are we doing, or what can we do?
I think that's a problem, because if you talk about policymakers, they already know what ought to be done, but how to translate that and engage the community, that's where the main issue is. Like, for instance, if you talk about barms, Bangsamoro, plastics is a problem. And especially for the island provinces, there's overfishing, the use of chemicals for seaweed farming has impacted the growth of the seaweed itself. I mean, it used to be robust, but now the produce is smaller and lighter. Then you have extractive industries, especially in Tawi-Tawi. You have like half of the mountain is gone because of the mining. It's not I don't know whether it's responsible mining, but I think it's not, because if you fly over Tawi-Tawi, you can see the water is already used to be green and blue, but now it's reddish brown because of the effluents from mining. So the thing is, how do you engage the community? I like their way. Like you have to engage the community. And for Muslims, I think this is also the same for Eastern Visayas. They're way below the poverty line. So their immediate priority is not on environment, but how to put food on the table and how to support their family. So way to engage is like what Miss Peggy said. You've got to give them alternative sources of livelihood. Like, yes, you can earn, but at the same time, help preserve the environment. So we're trying to see how we can do that in terms of the Basilan, Sulu, Tawi-Tawi area. One thing would be engage the subsistence fishermen, fisher folk, because they're dynamite fishing is a problem, and you have to do...
It's still a problem, huh?
Yes, because for the subsistence fishermen, they are competing with large fishing vessels who often use trawls.
Yeah.
So after they fish in that area, there's barely enough left for the subsistence fishermen. So this also a key. Governance is a problem. Policing the waters, because you don't have enough coast guards to monitor whether, hey, are you fishing in, do you have licenses granted by the local governments, and who gets to monitor whether they use dynamite or pesticides, right? So capacity building in the community is key. I think there are best practices done in Bohol and some areas in the Visayas where they engage the coastal community. It's not like top bottom, you've got bottoms up. They must know the severity of the problem and how it impacts their daily lives. And then they come to a consensus and see how, as members of a certain community, how do they address. Now that will be our problem. How do we engage the community?
So, from a pointing the finger at you, from a medical viewpoint, how are you kind of? What's the process of what you're doing medically speaking for helping communities, and how does that interrelate with your faith as such?
To be honest with you, our agency actually doesn't really focus on that medically. To, let's say, talking about the need to shift to a plant-based diet. There, as of now, there is no general idea about that in our commission. So the role of the medical officers there actually is just to do the usual medical missions. If there's a need to educate the people about health concerns, that's where we come in. But in terms of tying it up with the relationship of the healthcare system with climate change, with humanitarian aid, and what we can do about it, as of now, our agency has no direct interest in looking into that. To be honest with you, I cannot speak for the other government agencies, but with the limited meetings that I've attended, it seems as if we're just beginning to delve into that. The general idea about climate change and what we can do about it as a society is just being started in the government. Actually, it's more of such foundations as Tutsi that the expertise is found, but it's not really there yet in terms of the government agencies. So as of now, maybe if we're talking about health-wise, what we can do, there is a need to tap the medical societies. We have medical societies in the Philippines. For example, I am a member of the OBGYN Society in the Philippines, and there are several depending on the specialty that you have. So again, in those specific specialties, the knowledge about climate change, its effect on health of the communities and public health, understanding is not that deep yet, actually. So if you're talking about capacity building in the communities, there is also actually a need to capacitate healthcare providers about climate change, because what we know, we learned in grade school. To be honest with you, the medical curriculum in the Philippines as of now has nothing to do with disaster management or climate change. The public health, medical public health subject that we have just deals with the usual public health issues, infectious disease, but nothing about what is the connection about climate change and health, and what doctors can do about it.
So I'm going to kind of go out of the box in thinking about climate because I'm going to steer staying kind of on the medical side of things. If you talk about environment and everything, it leads back to the idea that human beings are the most marvelous machine of them all, and nature's gift in that sense. And so, if we talk about protecting things, the healthcare system seems to be steered. At least I'm going to now speak a little, maybe more of the U.S., but I think it's also true here, and that is that we focus on the sick as opposed to focusing on keeping well to start
Preventive.
with. Yeah, the all preventative type of scenario. So what are we doing as I'm going to say as a country, towards the idea of problems and doing all the preventative in terms of are we concentrating at all in an effort towards prevention rather than like people ask me why I'm 80 years old and people say you don't look 80, you look more 60ish and
for an American, yes.
And I say I do two things that I think I don't take pills. In other words, I stay away and try to stay natural, and so I have the vitamins, and I do two other things. One, besides taking the vitamins, I exercise, and then I also, I think, have a very positive attitude about life. And I think those are the things that contribute to longevity, but also I think it's also true relative to just overall well-being of preventative medicine in general. And so my question is we talk about the environment, but the environment affects every human being. And so what are we doing as that God's gift to preserve ourselves in the best way possible so we can be the most productive to society as such? And so my question is what efforts as religious groups should we be doing towards helping people from a standpoint of being their best selves, I guess I'll say, in terms of prevention prevention away from maladies or sickness.
Yeah. Not particularly on the whole medical issues, but I'm just looking at, I think, common significant approach that we can take from our faith. I think what I see is important is that religious groups of faith should make a stand on the whole issue of climate change. When I say make a stand is what do your faith tells you about carbon emissions and about advocacy against reclamation, about mining. I think religious congregations should make a stand. It has been done. For example, the Bishops' Conference of the Philippines have done that. Now, there's still a lot of challenge to implement their stand in terms of no acceptance policy, meaning not receiving any donations from agencies or corporations involved in producing dirty energies. Now, that's to me, that's a stand that needs to be taken by religious communities. Now, the danger is you can be red tagged. You can be red tagged, labeled as communist by this government and the previous government. That's the challenge. But I think that is important that every religious faith organizations should make a stand of protecting our common home and pay the price of the stand that we make. If we want, like for example, people are talking about the net zero, like that's the language there. People here in the Philippines are saying not net zero on 2050, it's real zero. Because language, issues can be lost in the language. And that's why, for example, we work with secular groups. We work with Greenpeace. We work with the Philippine Movement for Climate Justice. These are groups that really are into very specific advocacies against coal and against natural gas, because that's what this current government is doing now. Mm-hmm. Instead of targeting 2050 becoming neutral, they said, no, we need a transition energy. But we know that transition can stay for another 100 years. So I think, to me, it's crucial that faith communities should make a stand, because that's where the concrete actions will come. Officially,
Yes.
because previously in the Catholic Church there were there were people who really defended the environment, but they're a minority in relation to the whole the general communities. But in our case, it was a big help that Pope Francis issued Laudato Si, because we would have wanted, if that letter was issued in the 80s and 90s, it would have helped a lot of people in the 80s and 90s when people were very strong in protecting the environment. Mm-hmm. So to me, I think that's crucial, is that every faith community should make a stand, because it's in their stand that practical things will happen.
Again, I'd say that's preaching to the choir. That is really true. We definitely need to do that. So what other comments? Do you have one that sound like?
Yeah, so maybe in Suchi, the way we do things is we actually change from the grassroots, from ourselves. So in Buddhism, there are precepts. Precepts are like commandments, similar to the Catholic faith, the 10 Commandments. In Buddhism, there are 5 precepts for laymen, and there are 10 precepts for Tsuchi volunteers. The first precept is do not kill, or thou shalt not kill. For Buddhism, do not kill covers even all living beings, and it covers all animals. And in Buddhism, we believe that equality of all life, and that is why we really promote not killing for food. Mm-hmm. And we know that if we reduce our meat intake, we actually reduce our carbon emissions, we reduce our water, we save on water. Plant-based person will actually save a lot, 600 gallons of water every day. And we know that carbon emissions around the world, 30% of the all these gas emissions are actually coming from agriculture and food industry. And I think in Suchi, what we are doing is, our members are not all Buddhists. In fact, we have in the Philippines, we have more Catholics and Christians in the organization. And most of our volunteers have already reduced their meat intake. If you go to our office, which you are all welcome to visit our office, we all serve plant-based meals. And we always, in any speaking engagement that we have, and anytime we're invited, we actually try to promote that it's actually, we can actually do some little changes in our lives. Our volunteers also we always also say that if you throw something that can still be used, you're also killing that thing, that material. So we also try to do a lot of upcycling. We do a lot of recycling
and repurposing.
Circular economy.
Circular economy.
Yeah.
So I think we want to enjoin, because right now, today we have here diverse people from diverse faiths, and you have your own communities, and we want to enjoin everyone to really, I think it is really now really very, very urgent, and we cannot, even if we combine all our efforts, we cannot have another Haiyan in the Philippines, and it's going to be really impossible to help everyone. So we want to enjoin everyone to, maybe in your own communities and in your own groups, if you need help, you can always contact Suchi on how you can start changing maybe what you serve, the food that you serve, maybe how to capacitate your communities on how to start by looking at other choices for food. And I think from there, there was, I think it's a study by the UN, and it said that even if we remove all the global carbon emissions from all other industries, but you still retain what happens, what carbon dioxide or other gases that we emit through food, even if we curtail all the others, we won't reach our targets, because food really is a big industry, and it really affects the whole climate crisis. And the bigger the population, the more food that we need to feed everyone. And in fact, in Suchi, we actually our founder always gives us this card. She talks about going plant-based every day, every single day, trying to tell everyone, please reduce meat intake. And just for everyone's knowledge, we actually kill 2,500 animals every second. That doesn't include marine, doesn't include the fishes and marine life. Only the two-legged and the four-legged animals. That's 2,500. And we know how much energy, water, land are needed to support this industry. So I hope I can enjoin everyone, maybe in your communities, we start reduction.
Well, that's part of the process, isn't it? Is advocating and trying to change people's behavior, which is what we're kind of talking about. Not just people, but the whole environment. Changing behavior is part of that process, and so that's a key element to all of this. You'd mentioned the idea that you had a lot of statistics on climate change, etc. So what kind of how can you elucidate us on some of the facts and figures about El Nino and other facts of climate,
Sir,
pending disasters, etc.?
While Ma'am Director is looking for data, may I just add to that there is an issue with Mindanao. We have 3 big islands in the Philippines. It's Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao. And the thing is with Mindanao, it's a very, very agriculturally rich area. However, the people there are poorly trained and educated on how to take care of it. And unfortunately, the land is being exploited by mining and all other environmental issues, wherein it puts Mindanao in a state of danger in the future, because they're destroying the soil by poor agricultural practices, and they actually don't know why and what to do about it. So if they are saying that there's a need to educate the people actually on how to go plant-based, there's also a need for them to be taught on how to be plant-based and how to promote actually the industry. You have to teach the people on how to put more value in the work that they're doing. So for example, the subsistence farming and fishery, you need to teach the people on how to work for something that has more value, that does not stress their environment so much. Like the soil in Mindanao, for example, after a few years, we've been told that it won't be suitable for farming anymore. So the Dust Bowl event that happened in the US, that will happen in Mindanao eventually, if they're not taught on how to do proper agricultural practices. And there are limited people who can go there in Mindanao. A lot of people don't want to go to Mindanao. If I tell you, go to Mindanao and teach the communities there, a lot of them won't, because of the peace and order issue there. So that is also something that G20 should look into, because it won't just be a problem for Mindanao, it will be a problem for all the other areas in the region. It's a good thing actually to go plant-based,
I just have a few points to bring up regarding the Muslim Filipinos. The one is the Mindanao is experiencing a change in weather patterns. Historically,
Yeah.
it has
Yes.
not been in the path of storms.
But now it
We
is.
are
But now it
experiencing
is.
Yes,
severe
yeah.
flooding, no?
It's
And
worse.
with the El Nino this year,
Mhm.
predictions will be drought in Mindanao. So unfortunately, majority of the poor are located in the farm
Yes.
areas, and disaster risk management is not well developed. It's the place in the most vulnerable.
You're very
areas.
diplomatic.
And number two is the Muslim Filipino communities also have a very low education, so
Yes.
in terms of literacy rates, and climate changes and disaster management is mostly unknown.
Mhm.
And as you have said, more on reactive measures. We really rely on response aid, like relief distributions, every time a disaster strikes. No? So we need to engage the communities through public-private partnership, and let us involve the community in making decisions about climate change. So we need the collaborative. It's a collaborative governance. There should be a sense of active involvement of the community members, so they can be willing to collaborate, like the educations, the training, and of course the capacity building, as I said, right, for community empowerment. I think that's the
Good, thank you. So back to you.
Statistics.
This that.
Actually, I just read this morning that Manila and 24 other provinces will be experiencing a drought because of the El Nino.
Experiencing what?
Drought.
Drought.
Really?
Drought.
Yeah.
Because of the El Nino now, but it will be felt next year, January.
First quarter.
Yeah. At the moment, Angat Dam supplies 90% of Metro Manila water. Yeah. It's already at 180.67 liters, I would say, where the danger level is below 180. So it's actually about to be drained.
Mhm.
So that's actually really concerning, especially that even though that it will be next year, the effects will be next year. So we really have to be active in our actions regards to climate.
So what, excuse my ignorance, but what can be done on our part to help in that process? Is there anything that we can literally do to help?
Well, one would be conservation of natural resources, because actually they'll be implementing a restriction on water use from our concessionaires here in Manila specifically.
One thing that we practice also individually in Suchi is we say one chopstick's flow of water.
Mhm.
So when we open the tap, we teach also because we have a preschool, we teach the young kids in the school that when you only open your water, you only use the flow of water is like the thickness of a chopstick. So that's what we also we do have. Suchi has a lot of these things that we try to share, and then also teach our young people. So water conservation is one, but again, going plant-based on a daily basis, you actually already preserve or save on water by just choosing on what we eat on a daily basis. And just some data is we have like almost 8 billion people in the planet, and only 79 million are plant-based people.
Really?
So that's just really very, very.
I've never heard that statistic, so
Yes,
that's
yes.
interesting. So
Yeah,
is that?
so we have like 7.9 billion people, close to 8 billion people in the world, and only 1%, 79 million people are plant-based. So we hope to do more in that area. It's actually alarming on what our younger people who are younger, what will they experience in the next few years.
AMG Philippines, as I've told you, is a Christian organization, and our our vision is transformation and empowerment. And our theme verse is found in 2 Kings chapter 4 verse 1 to 7. It's the story of the widow.
Mm.
when she came to the prophet and asked the prophet for help because his sons will be sold to the for slavery. And what he asked the widow was, "What do you have?" Instead of helping, that's one of the problems of the Filipino people. We are used to dole outs, receiving things. One of our goal is trying to change the mindset of the people. That's what the prophet said to the widow. What do you have? Because most of us, even in the poor communities, that's what we are doing now. We are not just only giving them, but we are trying to change their mindset. What do you have? And every one of them has something. And we have to start from what they have before we introduce on how we could help them. That's one way of trying to change the mindset, and we are and that's how we are doing that now in our communities, especially for the poor people. So we started looking on what are the resources that available in the area before bringing in our programs to them, because they have a lot. They know more what to do in the area, and we listen to them, and we started it.
So what is happening on planting the
Abaca.
abaca?
Yeah, right now we are trying to revive. So one of our problems now is that there's a lack of planting materials because most of the abaca was eradicated. So that's why we started with few sources on few abacas and how we could multiply them. That's why before they have to plant one suckers. Now we have to divide the suckers into each IBAN so that we can produce more. At the same time, we try to help them.
Does it require fertilizer?
Yes, but also we are trying to use the natural, the organic one. We are at present we're encouraging to use chicken manure because that's the animal. We are trying to, but the supply is limited, so that's why we have to mix it. We are still using because
And
right
where is
now-
this again?
Eastern Summer.
Okay.
It's one of the poorest areas in the country, and that's our problem. We want to really help the people to restore the abaca, but planting materials it's really hard. And we are also trying to coordinate with the government agencies, especially DNR, because we also need to plant trees. This is an opportunity because many of the abaca needs shade trees so that they would grow properly.
They can't handle too much sun, huh? Yeah.
David, before we end, because
Oh yeah, we're getting close.
just aside from engaging the community, because these issues will be raised at the G20 Interfaith Forum, right? And G20 would be developed countries. Why don't we request the G20 countries encourage their corporations and business sector to develop, to allocate part of their corporate social CSR for environment, for environmental protection, and for instance, for ODA, put certain indicators or before ODA can be given or granted, that there should be an environmental policy or promotion in every grant, and then maybe look at sustainability of community efforts, because a lot of CSOs and NGOs do little projects, but they end
Scalability.
because of lack of funding.
To add to that, sir, maybe to be more specific, the Philippine government is trying to promote soilless agriculture in the Philippines. So to address their issues, let's say hydroponics, for example, is something that's been in the Philippines for a while, but it's not being widely used. We're still using traditional agricultural flooding methods, while hydroponics, aquaponics, aeroponics, all those things can easily be done I can say from experience because I've tried it, just to have confidence
Also,
on
also
how
Okay.
Davao.
how
Davao.
NCMF Davao also has started doing this, but the popularity of this and the money that's needed. So what she's saying, attorney saying to invest on this, it's much needed by the Filipinos. So it's not that just actually the traditional agricultural practices that should be developed. We should also look into soilless agriculture because with El Nino and all those issues, the issue of not having enough land
And enough water.
and enough water, a lot of the farmers don't own the land. So they really don't care if they take care of the land or not because it's not theirs. They're just land tenants. So if we look into soilless agriculture and developing it all over the Philippines, then it will address food security, water scarcity, abuse of the land, the actual soil.
Yeah, abuse of the land is one of the critical issues
Yeah.
for
Yes.
sure. For sure.
But we don't have
also
money.
Yeah, we also have a problem also because in Davao del Norte, Talaingot, we actually have a project wherein we're helping the indigenous people. We're helping them, teaching them how to plant bananas. So there are they own the land because they're IPs. So they own the land. It's just that they're like in Mount 45 geographically they're so far. And the problem right now is in previous years, no problem on rain,
But now there is.
but now there is. So irrigation is now a problem. And then we only used, based on our feedback from our founder, is to only use organic fertilizers. So the growth of the bananas is actually very slow compared to if you use chemical fertilizers. And then there's lack of rain. And then to be able to bring in irrigation and water to all these mountainous in their ancestral lands, this is also a challenge right now that we have in Davao, in our Davao office.
So if we were to summarize based on the fact that we're running out of time,
Time is up.
Not enough.
Not enough time for this.
if you're to talk about all these, collectively trying to consolidate our thinking here, if you were to take the highlights of what we've been talking about and consolidate that and say this is what we recommend to the COP28 in Dubai, what would you say? I mean, I'll go around the room and just say, what on top of your mind, what thoughts would you have?
Well, as I said, CSR, allocate a certain percentage to go to environment, maybe awareness raising, especially for the community, and try to encourage corporations to fund community-based programs that help preserve and protect the environment.
I would say help the agriculture sector by looking into unconventional methods and to bring in investments on how to utilize soilless agriculture in the Philippines, which is a mostly agricultural country, in order to provide food for this country and for the region as well.
Okay.
I think teach them about the organic farming. It's very
Okay.
important.
That's good. Yeah, that for sure.
Yeah, if governments or corporations governments can make policies, and corporations can actually just reduce meat consumption, I think it will really help. Maybe just reduce a few percentage of
And
their,
use of plastics.
yeah, reduce meat consumption, and maybe in their own policies like reduce disposable usage. Then I think it will immediately make a big dent, and then we can see all the other issues that we have on the climate and disasters also reduce in the future.
Alfred, do you want to add to that? Or?
I wanted to actually mention a while ago that we could add ComDev, community development, which includes environmental initiatives, because we have actually developed communities in Palong after Typhoon Haiyan, and we taught them these environmental initiatives, and they're actually doing it on their own with little supervision from the foundation. and we're really proud of those communities. So perhaps community development with environmental initiatives is one way we can introduce these from ground up in communities.
Okay, good.
Yeah, I think I go with them because we're working with the grassroots. It's really from down, transforming them up. Instead of coming up with our projects, the government would like to introduce a lot of projects, but it's not what they would like to do.
Okay.
So I think that's good. We have to start from change the mindset of the people, then come up with good projects that they will do.
Yeah, I suppose just for myself, like listening to the discussion, I think the complexity of the problem demands that we have to both address grassroots and policy
Yes.
together.
Yes.
Okay.
You can't just say we start with the grassroots and we don't do with government policy. Give you an example. During the Typhoon Sendong in Cagayan de Oro, the successful projects there was not the one run by the government, but the one run by the religious organizations, because all the monies were there. There was no culture of corruptions. That's very much now, it's almost like natural in the Philippines. So I think this is where because of the complexity, that we have to attack this from different, whatever our expertise.
areas.
We start with the grassroots, but we also have to work, because that's what the secular groups are telling us. Like grassroots initiatives are okay, but if you are able to influence the government, it will have a much bigger reach. And I think there's a wisdom in that. And I think we have to address everything at the same time. We can't just say start with this.
Yeah, maybe we better coin a new phrase. Have you heard of P3? So you've got P3 is the private-public partnership.
Yeah.
So we need to do a religion, grassroots, and political. So let's come up with the phrase for that.
That's
That's good. I think that
Actually, sir, there is. It's collaborative governance, what you just mentioned.
Yeah.
It's collaborative governance. So that really should be the
As
thrust.
all the
Yeah, because the problem we have in society today, it seems like we are very into siloing everything.
Yes.
Yes.
And one silo doesn't speak to the other silo,
yes, that's true.
and there
Exactly.
needs to be this homogeneous mixture. So there's
Rather than turfing.
yeah. So you probably have a better handle on the schedule than I do. So are we supposed to
We have to go back.
break
back.
and go? So
Because
let me just thank you all for participation. Your participation has been great, and I'm going to actually extend it a few more minutes just to talk about. I said I was going to talk about it at the end of this, and that is that I'm involved in a new technology that I came here to save the Philippines from
Plastics.
from plastic pollution. So I have a machine that literally you feed it all the plastic waste, and you don't have to do all the sorting that is common in plastic waste. You can take all the plastic waste, including what's called car fluff, which is all the interior of the cars, all that. You can take cooking oils and medical waste, medical hazardous waste, etc. You can push all that into this system, and out at the other end comes electricity and oil, pyrolysis oil. And that then gets recycled in the form of electricity to the needed areas. So one unit could produce as many as 300 to 400 homes, enough electricity, and it's a small unit. And enough oil to actually be used in the refineries for either expanding the use of the current level of refinery material, the gases and the oils. And so you've got this huge stockpile in landfill of plastic waste, and you've got daily, disbursement of single-use plastics and
Yes.
things like that, all going into the ocean, and this machine basically will alleviate that problem. So there are solutions out there for our climate problems.
Mhm.
We just have to get both the money and the lifestyle change,
Mhm.
which we've talked about, lifestyle change.
Mhm.
We need to start educating people that, this single-use unit isn't just thrown out onto the street. It's actually used properly and put into either bins or whatever, but not having to worry about that segmentation or selectivity of having to sort and do all those things. We can actually take care of that. So I'm here to talk to the government about trying to do that, to incorporate that, because it's a brand new technology. There's lots of people who burn up the plastics and things like that, but then that creates emission problems. And this one is zero emissions and total usage of the back end of the waste. And so I'm just giving you that as look into the future. This is one of the solutions that are going to help our plastic pollution problems.
You should talk to the island provinces.
Maybe
I'm
we can
talking
use that in
to
Pacific.
Barm.
Yeah.
We
Yeah,
can
but-
use that in Manila, in
Manila.
Baseco area.
Baseco.
Maybe
Yeah, yeah.
maybe pilot it in one of the island.
Yeah.
Will you be
municipalities.
willing to talk with one of the
the only
LGUs?
people I'm talking to so far is Barm.
Ah.
And so I haven't talked to anybody here in the Philippines, in Manila
Manila.
yet. But I'm going to try to do it through the embassy
Mhm.
and see if they can help smooth the way to make it happen.
Mhm.
So
How
hopefully
much
it'll
is
happen
that?
sooner
How
or
much
later.
is the investment for that?
Well, there's 2 units. That's the other thing is it's small rather than this big,
Mhm.
big,
Incinerator.
Like
hundreds of
Machine.
millions of dollars. It's a
Yes,
small
yeah.
unit. So there's a 5-ton unit, which is small. It'd be smaller than this room actually, and the 40-ton unit. And so there's 2 sizes, and they're expensive at this stage. But hopefully, with more use, more production of it, they'll reduce the cost. But currently, it's five for 5. 5-ton unit is $5 million, and the 40-ton is $10 million.
US dollars.
U.S. dollars, yeah. So it's expensive, but it's a solution,
Yes.
Yeah.
and that's the issue. It's a solution.
Maybe the Barm government can
Afford
Yeah.
afford.
Well, we're through BARM. We're going to look at USAID to see if we
To
can
see
get
if
them to help in the financing of
You
that.
should talk to the Tawi-Tawi governor
Yeah.
because he's awash with cash.
Billionaire.
He's mining.
Yes,
Okay.
But he intends to give back. So this can be a pilot project for him in Tawi-Tawi.
yeah.
But the plastic problem in Mormam is not really that
No,
heavy as
it-
compared to
But it
Luzon and
is.
Visayas.
But it is. Used to be the packing was done organic, use banana leaf. But with they want convenience. They started using plastic, and where do they throw it? They
The
throw it to
sea.
the sea.
Correct.
Yeah.
It's going to be a problem.
So the statistic is very alarming.
Yes.
Philippines is 3 times bigger polluter than the next closest nation.
That's true.
Yeah.
We use
And
a lot of
it is twice as bad as all the rest of the world pollution into the ocean. In other words, that's how bad it really is, and so that's why I've picked on the Philippines as the first user of this product.
It's one of the things
The
that is the
sachets.
poverty.
Yeah.
Like people can't buy just the big one; they'll have to get the
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 smaller
sachets.
one.
Sachet.
And there's actually now, I think there's a push in the government with the EPR, the extended product responsibility,
Uh-huh.
that it should be the responsibility of Nestle and other companies to provide and secure to take the trust because that's their product. So
Well,
again,
that's a very complex solution and problem.
Yeah.
And like what you're doing in Taiwan with the sorting and paying people,
Mm.
that
They're not paid actually.
Oh, okay.
All
Volunteers.
volunteers.
Oh, yeah, that's
Yeah,
right.
all
You're right. You're
Oh,
right.
but you
did
mean
say
the
that.
families bringing out, right? You pay them. The
No,
500.
that was
not
just for the
no,
design.
no.
That was for
in,
Ayan.
in the Taiwan situation,
Yeah.
they're all
Volunteers.
yeah. Was it 30,000 or 100,000?
100,000.
That is just marvelous.
Massive number, yeah.
That's
It
outstanding.
Helped the whole government in implementing trash segregation. So in Taiwan, I lived there for a few days. They pay for their garbage bags,
Yep.
and then everything that they use, they have their own. Like each community would have their own trash bins, and only those that cannot really be recycled are in these garbage bags that they have to buy from the government. So if you want less costs,
Make it
so
expensive.
yeah. So something that I was saying. Hopefully, we can do this in the Philippines, right?
That is, yeah, that'd be great.
Mindset.
Well, thanks again for participating,
Thank you.
It's our
and
pleasure.
appreciate all your comments. They've been very good.